I look at the coach, the personnel moves, it is set up for Caleb Williams to make a jump. And again, there'll be people that are like, well, who just have already determined that he's not good and be like, nope, he's terrible. He'll never jump up. But like a rational person would look at a quarterback who threw for, close to 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over a lot. And you could reason that he is going to take a step forward, that Ben Johnson's going to go out there and find a way to make him better.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast. I am your host, Dave Helman. We have got a jam-packed show for y'all today, so we're just going to dive right into it. We already had a fun topic lined up with our buddy Adam Rank of NFL Media. We're going to talk about second-year quarterbacks in the NFL this year, the 6 first-round picks from 2024, what might lie ahead of them in their sophomore seasons. Full conversation about that. But as we mentioned earlier this week, league meetings going on in Florida all week. NFL owners, coaches, GMs getting together down in Palm Beach, Florida to discuss the news, the current events of the NFL as they stand right now. Had a chance to catch up with Adam about that as well. If you didn't hear, there have been several rule changes adopted, several tabled, several turned down. Caught up with the latest news around the league with Adam Rank. Also had a chance, if you're not familiar, to talk about his Chicago Bears, what they might do with the number 10 overall pick in this upcoming draft. A lot of good stuff with Adam Rank. So like I said, let's get right into it. Really fun conversation. All right, I'm really excited for this one. A guy who I've followed for a long time, who I've admired his work for a long time, never actually made any content with him. So I'm happy to get this going. Welcoming my guy Adam Rank of NFL Media to the show. Adam, I feel like we've had this fun relationship where like we're moving in concentric circles, but never actually working together. So thank you so much for hopping on, man.
Yeah, it's kind of like when there's like 2 A-list actors and you're like, have they never done a film together? And you're like, no, this is the first time that they've gotten together. I hope this is the start of our like Clooney and Brad Pitt story. And now we just do a bunch of stuff together.
I guess topical because RIP to Val Kilmer. Like this is our Pacino and De Niro and Heat sort of situation.
Right. Yeah, and there's still people that claim like those 2 guys weren't sitting at the table together. And I'm like, well, I don't know, but still amazing. And by the way, speaking of Val Kilmer, I hope you don't mind me jumping into this Val Kilmer thing. It Absolutely is incredible to sit there, and a lot of people will point out and be like, oh, I remember him from Real Genius or Top Secret, Batman, The Saint, Heat. The amount, all these things, like the amount of Tombstone, obviously, like the amount of movies and the range that he had. Truly incredible. Obviously, Top Gun. Truly incredible.
I think the mark of a great actor is if you have like 3 different performances that resonate with like different types of people or different generations of people. Like obviously, people of a certain era, it's all Top Gun. And then people of a different era, love Tombstone, Doc Holliday's like their favorite character ever. Didn't even include Heat, didn't even include all this other stuff. That's the mark of like a really great actor is if your obituary can't be limited to like one movie, I think that's it right there.
It's very true. I know our friend Dave Damashek always talks about the string of movies that Harrison Ford put together where he went from like Star Wars through Blade Runner and all that stuff. Val Kilmer comes out the gate with Top Secret, Real Genius, and Top Gun as his first 3 motion pictures. I think that's a pretty great debut.
A heater to start things off, I would say. Like I said, RIP to him. I'm going to find time to watch Heat at some point this week. It's been a while since I've seen it. So fitting time. Speaking of fitting times, I think we're recording this as owners meetings are winding down. I think all of the important stuff that's going to happen out in Palm Beach has happened. So before we jump into the main meat of the show, I wanted to chat with you about some of the rule changes that happened or didn't happen at the league meetings this week. So to recap, for anybody that's not familiar, we're going to have a new touchback rule in the NFL this year. The dynamic kickoff, it was a big enough hit that they're going to keep it, but the league wants to see more returns. So now a touchback, instead of starting the ball at the 30-yard line, they're moving it up to the 35. Basically, the league said, okay, some of y'all didn't care enough about this to alter the way you're kicking the ball off, so we're just going to move it up even further. I think that's the biggest one for me. Do you have a strong take about this? Because I actually do, and I don't know if I'm overreacting.
Oh, that's a great question, especially as somebody who was a big proponent of Devin Hester reaching the Hall of Fame, which happened recently. I love kickoffs, and I think kickoffs should still be a part of the NFL. And I kind of don't like the way that we've kind of legislated it out of there, because I think, like, if you can have the ball at the 35, then everybody's going to want to have the ball at the 35. At this point, they might as well just place the ball at the 35. Like, let's not go through the theatrics. It's kind of like when you're playing pickup, and instead of doing a jump ball, you're just like, all right, like, we'll alternate possession. I guess that is an actual real rule in professional and college basketball. I don't really care for it. I like kickoffs. I thought it was a great part of the game. Selfishly, as somebody who grew up rooting for the Bears and Devin Hester and everybody, I really appreciate kickoffs, and I wish we would do more to encourage it.
So here's my thing. I love kickoffs too. It's one of the most exciting plays in football. I don't want them to go away. I'm glad that the league is making an effort to keep them in the modern game. But the 35-yard line feels like a really harsh penalty if you screw this up and kick a touchback, which has, been known to happen a time or two in the NFL. I looked this up. I was curious. In the NFL last year, 1,115 field goals were attempted. 276 of those came from 50-plus yards, right? Like, there are more kickers that can boom it from long range than there ever have been. So a quarter, 24+% of the field goals attempted in the league last year were from 50-plus yards. So if we're doing basic math here, a 50-yard field goal is from the opposing 33-yard line. And then obviously you've got your Brandon Aubreys, your Kaimi Fairbairns, your Joey Slies, who can kick it from 58, 59, 60 yards. You're basically saying, for roughly half the teams in the league at this point, if you start on the 35-yard line, you need 20 yards of field position to be able to kick a field goal. And I think that's a little ridiculous. I think that's taking things a little too far. Now, obviously, you just say, okay, well, don't kick it into the end zone then. But the margin for error there seems out of whack. Like, the 35 as a starting point feels a little bit too far down the field.
Yeah, I guess I'm missing the extra step of, like, they're trying to encourage them not to boom it into the end zone to make sure that people are returning it. But I agree with you. I think that, like, missing that, it's kind of like with some of these golf course designers that have to put these bunkers in, like, strategic areas where the layperson is going to hit it into that bunker. Like, just figure out a way. Like, I felt like if you would just move the kickoff back, because as you said, these guys now have big legs and can reach the end zone, move it back another 5 yards to kick off. Like, let them have their head of steam and go. I understand player safety. I appreciate what you're trying to do. But at the same time, I still want to see kickoffs because I'm a selfish person.
And I mean, like I said, I guess the answer to this, if you're whining like I am right now, is make sure your kicker kicks it short of the end zone. Like, theoretically, a pro kicker should be able to handle that. But how soon
do we have a guy? You have Brandon Aubrey, but then you also have your short game kicker. Like, this guy can only kick it, 40 yards. He's perfect for this. You're going to you're going to start using your punter. Like, I don't know. You're bringing it. It's too specialized now. Like, just go back them up 5 yards, and then just let them boom away.
That actually, I said that about Kaimi Fairbairn last year for Houston, because he can hit it from 60, but he's hit or miss from like 28, 29, 30 yards. It reminds me of college football. Like sometimes you'll see a college team with like a long range guy and a chip shot guy. So yeah, maybe we're just creating even more jobs for NFL kickers. Maybe that's what we're really doing
The
here.
rosters expand to 70 because we need 3 kickers, 2 different punters. Like the specialists are taking over.
If it leads to more kickoffs, I think it's a net positive. The other really big one is that the league adopted the overtime. The playoff overtime rule. So now if a game goes to overtime, regardless of whether it's regular season or playoff, each team is going to get a possession. Even if the opening team scores a touchdown, the other team will get a chance to answer. I also have a little bit of a whiny take about this, Adam. Can I share it with you?
Please do.
I was curious because like people talk about this all the time. People say, you know, that the 2021 playoffs are what started this, where 13 seconds, Kansas City ties Buffalo. They go to overtime. Patrick Mahomes marches them downfield. Everybody is aghast that Josh Allen didn't get his chance to answer. So I was curious. I went back and looked over the last 3 years. How many games have gone to overtime in the regular season? The answer is 47. And out of those 47, only 8 of these games finished with a team marching down the field with the opening possession and scoring a touchdown. It happened 8 times out of almost 50. I'm all in favor of everybody getting a chance to touch the ball, but did we need this? Like, were the rules not sufficient? And I guess I would argue that they were fine the way that they were.
Yeah, you know what? It's interesting because we've seen this, and it's not only a thing with the NFL, but it's also Major League Baseball, who has the ghost runner, but the playoffs and regular season have different rules. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, and I guess like other sports do it, like professional soccer does it as well, where you go in and you have like, you know, the Premier League will not have like the game ends in a draw. It just ends in a draw. I still sort of like that. I still sort of like the idea of games ending in a draw. I think it would be really cool in the NFL if we saw more of that. I know hockey got away from it too. Hockey, again, another sport that's like their regular season rules are different from their playoff rules. And I don't think that that's the correct way. Like either have one set that's going to go out throughout the whole season or else make it completely different. I personally love the college football playoff where like, okay, let's line it up at the 25 and see what happens. As a fantasy person, I really love this because, like, could you imagine you go into a game, you're like, I can't believe I started Tyrone Tracy, and then all of a sudden he scores 3 touchdowns in overtime. You're like, this is the greatest fantasy performance of all time. I kind of like that one where it's like, okay, we'll give you some chances. And then I would actually make them go for 2 every time. I wouldn't let them do the extra point for a kick. I kind of like that idea. I think that's more fair, or even then, like, or just put the extra 15 minutes on. Like, okay, we're going to play another quarter then. Like, okay, 15 minutes. We'll see what happens. I don't know if we're going to end up playing 8 hours, but I don't know. Again, as you said quite eloquently, like we overreact to one minor instance. And I think it was because Josh Allen looked so defeated when his team lost the coin toss. Like there were so many things that went on in that game that now created these rules. And remember, don't even get me started. The whole reason we have this, that we had the possession thing and not sudden death was because of Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning whining because his team lost in the playoffs to the Chargers again. Like, I didn't even get, like, Peyton, you were going to throw an interception to end the game anyways. They saved you. You should have been happy. Like there should have been nobody in that building happier than you. You didn't have another a dreadful playoff performance. And I say this as a bitter Bears fan. I do. Yes, I don't think we monkey around with these rules too much, tinkering, conflict. We don't need it. We survived fine as a society. We were fine when we just had ties. I don't know who's that upset about it, but again, we've now had to go out there and complicate things to the point of like the players not knowing the rules. Like that's the biggest thing to me. Like you get players who come out and like, yeah, I don't know the rules. Like I don't know. Like, I don't know. Do we do a coin flip? Are we playing cornhole to see who wins? I don't know. I would just like more, I want it more. I want it simplified. I think that's my biggest thing.
Well, my biggest conspiracy theory for as long as I can remember, I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory. I think it's just true, is that the NFL's nightmare is to have an overtime game bleeding into the next window of games. Like we're not trying to have a noon game still being played at, midway through the second quarter of the second window, or we're not trying to have a second window game bleeding into Sunday night kickoff. That is the primary motivation. I am very, very confident. I'm with you.
That's 100% accurate, by the way. That is 100% accurate.
If I could pick any way to do it, I would just say play an extra 15 minutes. And if it's still tied, then it's a tie, which I hate ties. But if you can't do it in 5 quarters, then we're calling it a tie. Like, I don't think we need to worry about all this. And like I said, 80% of the time over the last 3 years, both teams get a chance to touch the ball. So this is a very minute number of instances where we create this drama. And in those instances, I would say, well, tell your defense to play better. I think that's my overall idea here.
Well, if you follow anything this country does, you'll notice that we'll take the smallest minor issue and put our entire policy is driven around it. And I think the NFL has proven that with this overtime stuff, the kickoff stuff, making rules that don't need to be made, and all that stuff. And again, like at some point, I feel like, because as somebody who watches the Premier League, that is perfect. I think that's what the NFL wants to get to, because like most of the time you watch a Premier League game, like it's running clock. They've gotten creative with the stoppage of time, where you're like, oh, 6 minutes, really? But again, like, when those games are going to end. Like, there's not like, hey, this went on. There's too many timeouts at the end of the game, extending it. It's like, nope, the clock just runs. And I think at some point, the NFL, like 30 years from now, will be a running clock. And then right at 1 p.m. Eastern or 4 p.m. Eastern, your game ends, regardless of what's going on.
As a fellow soccer enjoyer, I was thinking literally today that, like, most of my life, you could count on stoppage time being like 3 to 5 minutes. And nowadays, 8, 9, 10-minute stoppage times is like the norm all across the sport. I don't know when exactly that happened, but it feels
2
like
years ago. Premier League did that a couple of years ago, where they really got loose with that. And I don't know what they were thinking the other day, where they gave Fulham 8 minutes, and you're like, oh my gosh. And listen, Arsenal almost bottled it, but held on to win.
Keeping them in the title chase for at least.
I don't even have to look. I know. I got to imagine that Liverpool destroyed Everton without even looking at it right now.
It was more dramatic than you probably think, but they did win.
I was too wrapped up in the Angels bullpen blowing a game, but whatever.
All right, before we're just making this a cross-sport episode, but there's a couple more things I did want to hit on here. This feels like a formality. I think everybody's going to be happy about it, but the NFL is finally adopting Hawkeye technology for spot measures. There's going to be a chip process to spotting the ball. The chain gang's still going to be there, but only as a secondary measure. I guess a little part of me, the part of me that grew up with, the measurements and Gene Steratore putting an index card down, part of me will miss that. But I mean, this feels several years overdue at this point.
Yes and no. I agree with you. If we've now advanced to the point of society where we have the technology to do this, we should probably do it. I get it. They once played football games in stadiums that didn't have indoor plumbing. So I get it. Like we evolved, but there's something nostalgic. And I think it's for old people like me, who really harken back to the days of, like, I remember, this is the craziest thing. I don't even know if you remember. You might not even be old enough to remember, like, not having that yellow line on the field where you're like, oh my gosh, did he make it?
I'm not that old. I'm sorry.
You don't even remember this. Like, it was a big thing of like all this technology back in the day where you were like, okay, well, like, they got to get to the 40 and you're looking and you're kind of paying attention that way. There was even a time where, like, the 10-minute ticker was coming up where you had to wait, living in Southern California, and my parents, being huge Bears fans, being like, okay, we had to wait to get the Bears score on the 10-minute ticker. Like, it's 20 after. Let's see what the Bears are doing. That kind of thing. Although it was the 80s, so the Bears were usually on TV. But it's wild how it continues to evolve. And I think most people would agree, most sensible people would agree, that if you have the technology for an exact measurement and not have, because I know a lot of times that's the biggest thing. Like you spend any time on social media, everybody's complaining like, oh, what a generous spot that was. Well, now we can take a lot of that out of it. It is part of the romance of football and of sport in general, but still, I don't know if you got the technology, you should use it. And I say that too, like, because I think of going back to soccer with the VAR, like when they call offside, and it's like the dude's like part of the dude's elbow. It's like, I don't know if we really need to be that precise. The ghost tag at second base, like, yeah, you're in the area, like whatever. But it probably is a move that needed to be done a long time ago.
Yeah, something about the spirit of offside feels out of whack ever since VAR, but I think this is an easy fix. It makes a lot of sense. And if I have to give up the 20 seconds of drama while I wait for the guys to pull the first down marker, I think I can handle it. The other big one, the NFL tabled the conversation about the brotherly shove, the tush-push, whatever you're calling it in the big 2025. We'll see what they say. I think it's the softest thing ever, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail and somebody will decide to try to stop the Eagles instead of banning something they're good at.
Thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Like, find a way to work around that. It is an effective play. Like, could you imagine if some team, what if the Falcons came? I know the Falcons are going to go, well, Michael Penix doesn't run that much, but we were like, hey, you know what? We want to eliminate the quarterback being able to run because we have Kirk Cousins. Like, that would be, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. Like, no, adapters or not. And I think like this is a big thing, and I didn't like it. I love the fact that it was the Green Bay Packers that brought this up. And if you're not familiar with my game, I am a Chicago person. So I'm like, yeah, Green Bay, way to go. And then George McCaskey comes out and he goes, yeah, we were against it. Like, oh, George, don't be on the same side as the Packers. We don't want that. But it is, I agree with you. I think like just stop it. Stop it a couple of times and it'll go away.
The Eagles themselves have struggled with it at times. They were great at it at the end of this year. They were great at it with Jason Kelce, but they've had periods of time where they weren't as good at it. And obviously nobody else in the NFL can do it. So just shut up and stop it, please, somebody.
I think the Commanders constantly jumping over the line. I think that again, like talking about overreacting to like an outlier. I think the Commanders making such a spectacle of it helped drive the conversation. I think they kind of like you talk about conspiracy theories. I'm like, I think that they were like, you know what, we can't stop it. So let's just make a spectacle of this. And then maybe they'll change the rules because we can't figure out a way to stop it.
Shout out Frankie Louvu. You've mentioned it. I think anybody that's familiar with your game is aware that you are a true blue Chicago Bears fan. So I did have to ask you, pick number 10, done a lot of exciting work during free agency. Where are you leaning as the draft is still not as close as I'd prefer it to be, but it's coming into focus at least?
It's interesting because every year for NFL.com and NFL Media, I put out my mock draft with a twist. Now, I do not put out a predictive piece. It is not the way that I operate. I'm not saying like I'm talking to insiders. My perspective is this is what I would do if I were you. If I were the Tennessee Titans, I think you should take Cam Ward. I've seen enough on tape to believe that he can be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Go out and draft. It's like that kind of piece, not trying to guess. So for the Bears, I think they're in a really interesting position at number 10 because coming into the free agency period or coming into the draft, when a lot of people talked about Ashton Genty, it felt like a luxury pick. And most Bears fans were like, well, listen, unless we get 3 new offensive linemen, an edge rusher, and a defensive tackle, you can't even look at Ashton Genty. And that's exactly what the Bears did. They make 2 trades, get in 2 new guards. They got a new center. They got a Jarrett and all those guys. So they did their work and they went out there and addressed every position. And I'm not saying that they're done by any stretch of the imagination, but they now have opened up the draft board where anything is possible. And there's a wide variety of things. And I'm actually looking at my my work right here is I'm in the middle of it right now and looking at some of the ways, like looking at some of the guys who could be available for the Bears. And I'm not saying that they're going to be available, but let's say if you had, and this is something that we did on our podcast where you've had Ashton Genty, Tyler, these four guys are not going to be available to the Bears. Not all four of them, I should say. But Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, Will Campbell, and let's say Mason Graham. Again, it would be, I don't know what would go wrong in the draft for those guys to be available at number 10. There could be one of those guys available. There could be none of them. So for me, when I look at it, I think the best move for the Bears is to continue to attack the trenches. And when I look at Will Campbell and I look at some of the offensive linemen, I'm not quite there to the point of like, that's a number 10 pick. I don't know. They might feel differently than me. I think they like Braxton Jones a lot more than people are seem to believe. So I think that's something, but I do really think, and the most enjoyable way to look at this is like, if Tyler Warren is there, I would say, my guess is that they would 100% take it. I really do think that they would see that a move that Ben Johnson would love to make and go out. Again, I think he's going to be gone. I think a couple of teams in front of the Bears make sense. I think Jacksonville is actually an interesting possible destination for Tyler Warren. And then, of course, that means Loveland would be available possibly. But ultimately, and again, I would love to see like Mason Graham fall down there, but I don't think he's going to. I think the guy to watch out for, and I know there's two cornerbacks who could be available there. I really like Will Johnson. I think Will Johnson might end up being the pick because cornerback is always something that Ryan Poles has put an emphasis on, where he has really tried to build the secondary. And you go back to Ryan Poles' first draft where everybody thought they would be going after somebody like George Pickens or Christian Watson or somebody like that. He goes with Kyler Gordon and Jaquan Brisker. And I truly believe that if one of the elite, and there's two elite cornerbacks here who are top 10 potential, I think if Will Johnson was still there, and again, if Ashton Genty is not there and Tyler Warren's drafted, I think that might be the pick, or just cornerback in general, depending on who he favors. I think that's the way to look at it because I really do believe he wants to shore up the defensive secondary. I think he loves the work that he's done so far in the trenches, but I think the cornerback could absolutely be in play for the Bears there at number 10.
I'm so glad you said that because, and it makes sense. Don't get me wrong. Ben Johnson is a play caller. He's an offensive-minded head coach. It's his first year. A lot of times you want to set the tone for your era with a pick on your side of the ball. I do feel like people just write off defense for the Bears. And I know they got Grady Jarrett. They signed Deo Dangbo as well. They have talented guys on the back end, but top 10 pick is a top 10 pick. Yeah. If you like Will Johnson, if a Mason Graham falls to you, or maybe if you're enamored with a pass rusher that's available, like you said, the draft board feels completely open, and I'm not willing to discount the value that might be there on defense. Even it's very fun to put Ashton Genty in that offense, or Tyler Warren, or just completely solidify that offensive line. That's all very fun, but I'm with you. I don't think you can discount the other side of the ball.
And I would say that they could possibly trade down a couple of spots. We saw it when a couple of years ago when they traded down. I know they went one spot to allow the Eagles to take Jalen Carter, but I think if you look at somebody like Nick Amonwori, the safety out of South Carolina, that could also be a player who could be on the Bears' minds because obviously Jaquan Brisker missed a lot of time last season. He's cleared and ready to go. But that could also be a position of need for the Bears. So I truly believe that it's going to come on the defensive side of the ball. And I know it'll probably frustrate a lot of Bears fans, but I think that that's the way they're leaning.
That's my favorite thing about the draft is every single fan base fixates on the two or three guys that would really fit. This would heal me, like this would heal us. This would make us whole. And then, the team's going to go in a completely different direction and take the guy that upsets everybody because that's just what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, Ryan Poles has shown that he would do that in the past. And again, like nothing's off the board, like nothing, but that's a great part of it. And that's a great part of the Bears position right now is like, everything's available to you and it allows you a lot of freedom in case something weird does happen in the draft. Or you know what? If if the quarterbacks fall, I think it's a real legitimate possibility for Shedeur Sanders. I think he could end up tumbling down the draft board a far way. But if if Cam Ward for whatever reason doesn't get drafted in the first 3 picks, which again I think it's pretty much a given that he's going to, but again, like that could be something that causes a lot of chaos in the draft.
Quarterback talk is a perfect segue to the main meat of why I asked you here today. So we're going to talk about some second-year quarterbacks. You might remember there were quite a few of them. There were 6 first-round quarterbacks taken in 2024 with, I would say, all to some degree successful in 2024. Not maybe all of them as successful as everybody imagined and talked about, but good building blocks across the board, in my opinion. So we're going to play a game of jump or slump, where we talk about whether these guys are going to continue that trajectory or hit the dreaded sophomore slump. And I mean, he was the number 1 pick overall, so it makes sense to start with him. But even if he wasn't, I feel like we'd have to start with the Chicago Bears guy, Caleb Williams, who, I mean, there were already big expectations on him, but if it's possible to raise the stakes on a guy who was called a generational prospect, this is how you do it. You hire Ben Johnson and you add talent all over the offense. I feel like somehow the stakes feel even higher for this guy than they did last year. Do you think he can answer it?
I really do. And again, when you look at all the moves the Bears have made, and this has been an off, I know we say this every year, like this is an off season unlike anything we've ever seen before. But when you look at the Chicago Bears, and I think a lot of people coming into the hiring cycle for the head coach, a lot of people were skeptical that the Bears would be able to get Ben Johnson because the McCarthy family has not really opened up the pocketbook to make a move like this. They're like, there's no way they can afford him or do anything like that. But that's exactly what the Bears have done. They've gone out there, they got the guy that everybody wanted them to get, that they thought that everybody wanted. The Raiders wanted, all these teams, the Saints would have wanted him. And the Bears got the guy that they wanted. They also were able to retool the offensive line by bringing in 3 veteran guys on the inside. It's very similar to what Carolina did last year, where they brought in the 2 guards and they went out there and they did their thing. So I look at the coach, the personnel moves. It is set up for Caleb Williams to make a jump. And again, there'll be people that are like, well, who just have already determined that he's not good and be like, nope, he's terrible. He'll never jump up. But like, a rational person would look at a quarterback who threw for, close to 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over a lot. And you could reason that he is going to take a step forward, that Ben Johnson's going to go out there and find a way to make him better. So I think I buy in because I'm a Bears fan, but I think that as somebody who's watched Caleb Williams since his time at Oklahoma, really do believe he's one of the great talents in this league. He is going to jump up. And he is going to be making more plays. And I think when you see a more structured offense that's built for his strengths, he can't help but get better this season.
I firmly believe, and I see it going around. I don't know how much of it is real because you can never know for sure what you're seeing on social media and whether it's real or whether it's bots or AI or any of that type of stuff. If you watched Caleb Williams play a lot of football last year, not just some games, but if you watched him play every week and you came to the conclusion that he is bad, I can't take your opinion seriously. Like we can critique his play. He takes way too many sacks.
Yeah.
His pressure to sack rate was 28%. He's got to figure out how to navigate a pocket. He's got to figure out how to get rid of the ball. If you think he's outright bad, I think that's just a silly opinion. But that's what excites me for Caleb this year is it really feels like we're going to get an answer as to whether he can solve those problems with his game. Because Ben Johnson is here because he's one of the best play callers in the league, one of the best offense designers in the league. And they threw resources at that offensive line. Jonah Jackson was a Pro Bowler for Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Joe Tooney has a case to go to the Hall of Fame one day. If Caleb doesn't progress in that way with this environment, I will start to be concerned that he can't answer those questions. But to act like the guy was a bum last year just really rubs me the wrong way. So I'm with you. I'm buying that he plays even better.
I'm glad we're on board with that. Yes, thank you.
I want to see how you feel about the next one, and that's obviously Jayden Daniels, which before anybody comes for me, I've got the guy hanging on my wall right here. Right. I'm in this with Jayden as an LSU alum, but I just worry. I worry though about following up a season like that. It is hard to follow up an all-time great rookie season. You can ask CJ Stroud, you can ask Dak Prescott. It is hard to meet those expectations 1 year after a run like Jayden Daniels just had. So I'm in on him as a player. I don't know if I'm in on the Commanders linearly improving from being an NFC championship team.
No, I agree with all that. And it's funny, I didn't realize that I should have known. I know that I've heard like, yeah, you're the LSU alum, Carmen, ASU. So the Jayden Daniels experience is
Jayden Daniels is a big part of the household here for sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's perfect. And I like Jayden Daniels. It's so wild to think about too, that Jayden Daniels, his freshman season, throwing to Brandon Ayuk. I mean, people don't he played college football for a long time. And it's part of the reason why I look at this the same way that you do. It's like, he's already great. How much greater, how much better do you think he's going to be? And it's kind of like Guns N' Roses. They came out and they put out Appetite for Destruction, which is one of the greatest debut albums of all time. And then their follow-up, the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, not bad, still good, a lot of hits, but do you think it's better than Appetite? Nobody would argue that. Nobody thinks it's better than Appetite. And I think that Jayden Daniels will run into that. And I think that the conversation's going to turn. And like now the people who are non-Commanders fans will be like, what happened to Jayden Daniels when he doesn't score as many fantasy points, doesn't run? You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, he'll still be good. The Commanders will make the playoffs. But if he's not out there putting up superstar-like numbers, people are like, what happened to him? Where did he go? And same thing happened to CJ Stroud this year. Where people are like, what happened to CJ Stroud? You're like, the Texans made the playoffs. Like, I understand it wasn't cosmetically as nice as you would have liked it, but they still won a lot of ball games. It was frustrating as a fantasy enthusiast who was banking on a lot more touchdown passes, but like CJ Stroud still played pretty well. Like they were good. Like it's not that bad. And I think that Jayden Daniels is going to run into the same thing. And I know that there's now this rivalry between Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams because nobody can just enjoy their guy being good, but you also have to have your guy being good and the other guy not being good. It reminds me of people who like DC Comics or Marvel. Like I can't like Spider-Man and Batman. People who like AEW and WWE. Like I can't like Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks. Like what is going on? Like I think both things can be good. And I think that Jayden will be good, but I think the perception of him will make it seem like he's not as good anymore.
What are we even doing this for if we can't trumpet our personal preferences as gospel over our hated enemies? And by hated enemies, I just mean people with different opinions.
Yes, of course. Yeah. You can't, your guy is washed. I don't care who you like. Yes. And I know people, I get it. Like anytime they'll be like, how much do you, I'm like, I don't even think about Jayden Daniels. The Bears lost the game to him. And then that was the last time I thought about it in that sense. But sure, this is why we have careers. So encourage it. Keep up the, you got to have, it's got to be polarizing one way or the other.
Which is, yeah, we can, clip this out in December when Jayden is an all-pro. And yeah, that's what it's all about, 3 quarterbacks taken in a row at the top of the draft. So we just keep it going. Drake Maye, number 3 overall. Again, I thought he was perfectly fine as a rookie who got inserted into a bad lineup halfway through his rookie season. My thing with Drake Maye is I'm just starting to get nervous, and I'll say starting to get nervous because this is well before the draft. I'm starting to get nervous that the Patriots aren't going to do enough to help him this offseason. Do you think I'm overreacting?
You think that just signing Stephon Diggs and calling it a day is not enough to go out there and do it? Like, it'll be very interesting. And again, as I'm working through my piece with NFL.com of like what the Patriots should do at this point. Like, what are they going to do? Now, obviously, they could go out there. They could try to get they probably should build the offensive line. They should probably get him some more protection. I think it was Pro Football Focus that had the Patriots as the worst offensive line in football. But if Travis Hunter is still on the board, if Tyler Warren is still on the board, like do you pass on one of those elite level talents and kind of put him in great peril? So I'm more concerned with what kind of offense they're going to run. What are they going to be doing out there? What is Mike Vrabel and that staff going to cook up? Or do they even draft an offensive player? What if they go with Mason Crosby or Mason Graham? Mason Crosby. Yeah, they're going to draft a kicker who's 90. Mason Graham. There's a lot of ways the Patriots can go. And I'm with you. Like, I'm not necessarily just saying, like, just assuming the Patriots are going to do the right thing. So I'm nervous for him. Although he played better than I thought he was going to be. So I'll put him on the trending up level.
I went into the offseason thinking like, this is going to be great. You know, the Patriots are going to sign Kevin Zeitler and they're going to steal T. Higgins from the Bengals. And we're just really going to have a reason to be excited about this. And they do have a top 5 pick. They could still go a lot of ways with it. I'm not writing this in stone, but I thought I would be more excited about what was around Drake Maye by this point in the offseason.
Me as well. You know, I like the idea of bringing in Mike Vrabel. I think that was a great move. I think he's a great coach. And if anybody who follows me, I kind of wanted him to be the coach of the Bears. So I really like this. And I think that quarterbacks can be successful under Mike Vrabel. But again, give them something to work with. Give them a lot. Either you got to go one way or the other. Like either rebuild that offensive line and make it undeniable, or else then like otherwise just go out there and get every stud. Go get Tyler Warren then. Just go out there and do it and call it a day.
If all of this wasn't bold enough, let's talk about the guy that we saw one game of preseason football from and have not seen again. That's obviously JJ McCarthy, who at least right now doesn't look like he's going to have much in the way of competition. And I mean, I hesitate to say the word competition. He was a top 10 draft pick. Obviously the Vikings want him to be their starter, but I'm at least slightly surprised that there's nothing on the Vikings roster to push JJ McCarthy, or at least to serve as insurance for JJ McCarthy as he recovers from this injury. Where do you think this is going, Adam?
Unless Aaron Rodgers shows up, we never know. But it feels like if they're not going out there, not making sure that Sam Darnold's going to return, not going after one of these veteran quarterbacks, who knows? There's still some guys out there who could possibly lend some assistance here. But it looks like they're committed to JJ McCarthy. And when I think about JJ McCarthy, I just think of this Mike Shanahan coaching tree and all the coaches that fall under this, whether it's Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, KOC, any of these guys, Matt LaFleur, there is a floor that you see with every quarterback that comes from this coaching lineage. And it's right there at like, you know, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, those guys. Like, I would expect JJ McCarthy to come in and play pretty well almost immediately. I think the lowest expectation should be Brock Purdy. And I think there's opportunity for him to grow. And I don't think that it's unusual to find these guys who aren't really asked to do a lot in college, but are now given an opportunity when they get to the NFL to really showcase the talent that they have. I call this the anti-Jim McMahon, the reverse of Jim McMahon. Jim McMahon, one of the most prolific quarterbacks in college football history, was drafted by a team that's like, hey, can you hand it off 30 times a game? But I think that there's an opportunity for him to grow. And as a matter of fact, I'll be telling you this in my fantasy drafts this season. With one of my last picks, I'm going to make sure that I secure JJ McCarthy on the upside that he could have a breakout year. And I think there's a really good chance for it. And I think that the Vikings' lack of urgency in getting another quarterback tells me that they're comfortable with them. And if KOC's down with it, then I'm down with it too.
You know what's funny about JJ is last year, I was not sold. I watch a ton of, you laid it out perfectly. I just didn't feel like Michigan asked him to do a lot. I didn't think he had been in very many do or die situations. You know, that Michigan team was almost always playing with the lead, very rarely threatened at the end of games. I was not sold. After watching what KOC did with Sam Darnold, in addition to what he has already done with Kirk Cousins and with Josh Dobbs and some other guys over the course of his career, I'm in. I'm in on JJ McCarthy, even though he was hurt last year. He wasn't even practicing. He wasn't doing anything. But I am just a believer in Kevin O'Connell, and obviously the Vikings have a great situation around him, arguably the best situation you could drop a starting quarterback into, or one of them anyway. I'm just in. I did a 180 over the course of 1 year where I'm like, you know what? If you can turn Sam Darnold into a legitimate MVP contender, and that's not even a shot at Sam.
I think it is. No. I think it is. It's not a little offended.
He always had the talent, but for him to very effortlessly turn him into a 30+ touchdown guy, I'm in. Whatever KOC wants to do, I think it's going to work.
Yeah, there's a few coaches that get that stamp of approval for me, and KOC is definitely one of them.
I think another one to segue to our last guy is Sean Payton, because again, I was out, not even just not buying it. I was out on Bo Nix. I, again, watched his entire college career. I didn't buy him as capable of morphing into a more NFL type of prospect and not using his athleticism to buy time the way that he did in college. Sean Payton made me a believer. And again, after last year and the fact that Denver's ecosystem around him looks like it's going to be even better, also in on Bo Nix being better in 2025.
I agree. As one of the top believers around, I think that he's just getting better. Honestly, I thought that the Broncos did a great job going out there and getting Evan Ingram, bringing in a reliable target for him. And, you know, they have an opportunity here in the draft. I know they kind of worked themselves into a quarter by being so good. You took yourself out of the early picks, but I still think there's going to be a lot of wide receivers available to them when they are drafting, to bring in a guy and to bring in and give him another weapon to work with. I love the situation. I love the way that the coach and the play caller were able to work. I think it's very similar though to Jayden Daniels, where how good is this? Like, how much better is it going to get? Like, is he going to go out there and he's going to go throw for 5,000 yards? I think there'll be an opportunity for him to improve, but I think that, again, you got your team to the playoffs. You did very well. It might not satisfy the fantasy dorks and everybody out there, but I think he's going to get better. Statistically, we'll see what happens with him, but I think he's on the upswing, and I really like this. I thought, again, coming into the draft, I wasn't sold on him till, similar to what you're talking about with KOC. I wasn't sold on him till he was drafted by Sean Payton. You're like, okay, he must be good. Like, okay, like it. I didn't realize that. Like, if you want to, if you ever get like a financial recommendation from Matt Money Smith, you're like, okay, that's probably pretty good. Similarly, when Sean Payton's going out there and getting the quarterback that he wants, I'm like, okay, I'm in. I think this is going to be great.
I don't think I buy that Bo Nix would have been as quick a success as he was on not every other team, but most other teams. Yeah, maybe Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan comes to mind, Sean McVay, some of these quarterback gurus. But for him to land in Denver with a phenomenal offensive line and Sean Payton figuring it all out, maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised that it was going to work. I'm with you that Jayden and Bo both I could see developing into better overall quarterbacks while their teams have less good records, but that's just the nature of the NFL.
That happens all the time, yeah. But it's not indicative of the talent of the quarterbacks.
I am very interested to see. I just looked it up. The Broncos pick 20th. They also have pick 51. if we're coming out of this with a difference-making running back and another receiver to add into the mix, I could get very, very excited about year 2 with Bo Nix for sure.
I could see somebody like Matthew Golden being available to them when they're picking, and there's a couple other guys. I think that the receiver out of Arizona is really good too. So it'll be. I'm curious to see who's available to them when they're picking, because again, you never know. Teams evaluate wide receivers in a wide variety of different ways, but I think that they're going to get an opportunity to get a good one, and I'm excited to see what they do.
I think overall, even with a couple guys that we said, we're a little bit concerned about, again, to your point, you don't have to necessarily put some of these guys over the other. I'm pretty confident all of these guys are going to remain successful. Again, success is not always a linear path, but I think all of these guys have staying power with their current situations. I'm really excited to see if I'm right about that.
100%.
Next, let's do the guy that we saw briefly at the end of his rookie year, Michael Penix Jr. Some exciting flashes in Atlanta. I double checked this just to make sure. He threw 100 passes as a starting quarterback. So lot to like, I think, but I'm thinking of an incomplete from his rookie season, which makes me wonder what we think is in store for him in year 2.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I wasn't sure what we were going to get out of him coming out of the NFL draft. And when he went to Atlanta, playing behind Kirk Cousins, and we didn't know if he was going to be able to bounce back, it was really a curious situation for me. But I thought he played well. I looked at, what he was able to do with Drake London, and my guy, Darnell Mooney. They got a great running attack with Bijan Robinson, and then whatever Kyle Pitts is doing down there. I think he could be pretty good. I think he moves up. I'm curious to see what we get out of the Atlanta Falcons this season. Like, number one, they've got to get serious about, getting to the quarterback on the other side of the football. Like, what are you guys doing? But it puts their quarterbacks in positions to where you're always in these shootouts, where you always have to throw the football. Atlanta is not they're always in these games where you have to score a ton of points. I would like to see them be able to really lean on Bijan Robinson, run the ball a little bit more, and then really just kind of let Michael Penix pick his spots. I'm still optimistic that he's going to go out there and improve. Again, we didn't get a full season out of him, so we don't quite know, but I do believe that a lot of these quarterbacks would benefit from sitting behind a veteran play caller, which Michael Penix was able to do. I don't think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes coming out and replacing Alex Smith, but I think we're going to see something better than what we saw out of the end of last season. So I'm looking forward. I'm an optimistic sort. I think Michael Penix comes out and surprises a lot of people.
I don't know if the Falcons intended it this way, but I have no choice but to take it as a vote of confidence in Michael Penix that Atlanta didn't really try much in free agency. Like Leonard Floyd is a nice signing. He's a great mercenary pass rusher. He's in a different city every year, getting 8 to 10 sacks. But if that's the only major thing that you do on a team that finished with a losing record last year, that to me suggests we feel really good about this young quarterback that we're plugging into the lineup next year.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think that, and when you look at it too, you look at who are the offensive skill players around him. The line is pretty good, obviously. The center, Drew Dahlman, is not going to be there, but they still got a pretty good offensive line. They've got great skill player guy, and I'm going to say great. Yeah, I think they are. And I'm not going to get into the trap in fantasy draft season where I'm like, this is the guy that unlocks Drake London, but I still think that's a valuable piece. I think they'll be pretty good. And I think he's going to be given an opportunity to succeed. And again, I don't think that defense is going to be fixed overnight. So I don't think there's going to be a chance of the Falcons are bleeding the clock at the end of the games. I think he's going to get an opportunity to throw the football.
Why do I feel like, regardless of the Falcons' record, Michael Penix is going to be judged by the football watching populace on whether or not he can finally unlock all these great fantasy players that have frustrated us all so much?
100%. That's where it comes down to. If Bijan Robinson is not the RB1, if Kyle Pitts is not a top 5 tight end, then Michael Penix will be viewed as a failure. The Falcons could go 14-3 They're like, yeah, but Kyle Pitts had just 3 touchdowns. That'll be his legacy.
I cannot wait to see how all this ages, Adam. Thank you so much again for hopping on, man. We will have to do this again soon. I appreciate it.
No, the pleasure was all on this side of the Zoom camera. Appreciate it, and hope to see you soon.
Absolutely. And we hope to see y'all soon. We'll be back next week. Check us out on Tuesday. Make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, you can go find us Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods. We will be back at the beginning of next week, catching you up on all things in the league. We'll see you next time. As always, I appreciate it so much, and I'll talk to y'all soon.